Who'd you like to speak to?
Awesome. Well, let's start with Salvatore in Louisiana. Salvatore called in a couple of times, and I've really enjoyed the conversations we've had. Welcome back, Salvatore.
Hi, Salvatore.
Hey, good morning, y'all. How y'all doing?
We're doing good.
Yeah, what do you want to talk about? Oh, sorry.
Hey.
He's hosting.
Hey, guys. So I called in a few weeks ago. We talked about evil, and I'm still kind of mulling that over.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the call, I mentioned that I was an atheist and a pagan, and there wasn't enough time. So you said call back later. So
Awesome.
to talk about, so I'm calling back.
Okay.
And if you want to hear kind of my elevator speech or whatever, usually when people ask me about it, I kind of quip and say that I'm religious but not spiritual.
I kind of like that a lot, actually.
So part of it is my upbringing. Like, I was raised in the South. I was raised very, very Catholic, very Christian, and I was socialized to church.
Mm-hmm.
And after I deconstructed, I found myself at a Unitarian Universalist church. It was just easier that way, especially in the South, to make friends and meet people.
Yeah, as one does.
I mean, out here in the South, the first question they ask, "Hi, what's your name?" Second question they ask, "What church do you go to?" Like, that is just the way that they, introduce themselves. So yeah, it's totally understood.
Well, and look, after I deconverted, I lost all of my friends. Like, I played guitar in the choir. All my friend group was in the Catholic Church. And after that, I think I had one friend left after I deconverted. So that was and I'm an introvert. I'm kind of shy, so it was easy to kind of insert myself into the group at that church and just kind of start making friends there.
Yeah. So I guess my question for you, because I totally get, like, I actually really like the religious but not spiritual concept, because it does speak to me about, it's not the spiritual elements or the supernatural elements so much as it is the ritual and the community and the history behind it. So
absolutely.
Talk a little bit about how you chose paganism, I guess, because for me, my question with especially atheopagans or people who practice, kind of like me, forms of witchcraft or paganism that also intersects with a lack of a God belief, is why you chose that specific thing. And if God concepts, even if they are just concepts and not actual beings or entities, is a useful thing for you.
So for me, ritual is a big part of it, and one of the reasons why I drifted toward paganism was because, again, coming out of Catholicism, I missed the ritual, and I'm a member of a Druid organization called OBOD, Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids, and it's not. They don't claim to be a religion. It's more like a philosophical overlay. So that it was. And they accept everybody. So there's actually several atheists in our group, and it was the ritual thing, and it was the communal thing, and that's where that kind of the itch that needed to get scratched for me, and that's why I kind of drifted and moved in that direction.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
That does. Thank you.
Okay.
I think, honestly, Eric and I are going to have different opinions on this, because I totally get that. And as long as you are willing to have the difficult conversation with people around why, believing in supernatural things and that kind of mindset it can be very harmful. I don't really see an issue with, finding that community, using language or using rituals that might be typically, if not in your case, ascribed to supernatural beliefs. But that's just me. Eric, what are your thoughts?
So my initial take on it is this, like, you talk to somebody who's culturally Jewish, right? And they were raised Jewish, and they have Jewish traditions, they celebrate Jewish holidays, but they don't actually believe. And so they call themselves cultural Jews. In that way, in a similar way, I guess I'm still a cultural Christian in that I celebrate Christmas, a lot of those same holidays, although with none of those religious things. I just want excuses to celebrate the people that I love and all of that stuff. And so Salvatore, would you say that you're a cultural pagan?
That's interesting. I think it's a little deeper than that for me, because getting back to the God concept that V was talking about, I see when I in ritual and other workings, or I don't want to call them prayers, the gods are like psychological archetypes. So for me, I heard a breath like someone was going to talk.
Oh no, I was just so like in a Peterson-esque kind of Jordan Peterson, the deeper truth is the archetype that we find in there, like that kind of thing.
I hesitate to be associated with anything that Jordan Peterson said.
So my pushback is in several parts, because in one, awesome. You found what works for you. You don't believe in superstition. You don't believe in all of that mumbo jumbo. So once you kind of get there, you need to find what works for you, what's good for you and your happiness, but then also the impact that you have on other people. And I think if I were in your shoes personally, I would try and find a way to communicate the way that I feel without inadvertently propping up the superstitious beliefs of other people in that same group, right? So there are pagans who do believe in actual gods, and you being a rational, reasonable person have, interacted in such a way that I could imagine somebody going, "Hey, I know Salvatore. I trust Salvatore." Is it Salvatore or Salvatore or Salvatore?
So the Italian pronunciation is Salvatore, or Salvatore, but I always joke that that's too many syllables for the South, and most, yeah.
Okay.
So Salvatore is fine.
Okay.
So let me. Can I answer that, or did you have more?
No, I think you know exactly where I was going with it.
Yeah. So everyone who knows me, in fact, it took me a little while in my Druid Grove, but I'm very out as an atheist, and I've actually been very, very surprised. My friends and the people that I interact with on a daily basis or weekly basis, they all understand. In fact, I have a good friend he's a Wiccan high priest. And we've had this conversation many times, and he's like, dude, I don't care, how you see the gods, because there are, like I think V said, there is Atheopagans that don't believe in metaphysical gods or what do they call them, a mind with no body, or some of these other things that, and I've read some of those books, and I disagree. It's like, I don't understand how a mind can exist without a body. But,
for all intents and purposes, it cannot. So
yeah.
So I'm really on the fence about this. I think that I disagree with Eric.
Surprise.
Which is I know, shocker. I don't think that we should be, unless we are aligning unless you're like, well, I'm a Nazi, but I'm not like all those other Nazis. Like, unless it's like an actually like acknowledged problem group, I don't think we should be worried about like, oh, well, I know this other person who also calls themselves this, and this is what they think, so I guess that's also what you think, right? Like with atheists, there are so many atheists that I want nothing to do with. Like if I was purely going by what people thought about atheists based on other atheists, I would never call myself an atheist, because I'd be like, well, is that propping up these other people who are saying horrible, misogynistic, homophobic things, right? Like, so I think there's a fine line to walk here between making sure that you're accurately representing your own viewpoint and being outspoken about maybe where it differs and where you see harm in your communities, because I think that's super important.
Sure.
But I also don't think we should be, for lack of a better term, policing how we or others identify, because that could be misconstrued to mean something else because someone else used it irresponsibly.
That's a really good point, actually.
I mean, I think I agree with you. Mm-hmm. And there's another separation though that I think might help clarify this, because I think, V, we might be on the same page of this. And that is this: yes, there's the pragmatic sense of, what is the impact that I have on others? Am I being dangerous, or is what I'm saying, dangerous to others? Is it some benign view, right? If somebody thinks they can see other people's auras, for instance, and that's it, they're not hurting anybody. I think you're on the right track that we're making decisions pragmatically that way, right? Can I extrapolate that from what you said?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. There's that. And then there's the bar that you hold yourself to. And I want to challenge people not to police others, but to take a good look at their own views and make sure that they have good reasons for the things that they believe. You may hold other people less accountable than yourself. You can go, hey, you know what? That person believes something weird or wacky, and it doesn't really matter because they're a great neighbor and we barbecue every weekend, right? That's fantastic. But personally, where do you hold yourself? What standard is that? And are you being consistent throughout? And so I agree with you that in practice that is true, but I also want to encourage people watching that just because something is benign doesn't mean it should be acceptable personally. You can believe some weird stuff, right? I've talked to family members who believe some weird stuff.
Yeah.
And when I say, hey, do you have good reason? Their response is, but it's not hurting you.
Right. Oh, that's a whole other thing. The concept of
that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
That's the line I want to make. That's the distinction I want to make.
Yeah.
Is, just because it's benign doesn't mean it's acceptable or should be acceptable to you. Not necessarily you need to be policing other people, but what are the reasons that you have for what you believe and why? Right.
Whether or not something is true or even useful doesn't necessarily, unfortunately, have a correlation with how much harm it causes or not.
Yeah. And if someone has an entirely harmless opinion, should they challenge themselves? I think they should.
Okay. Interesting.
But Salvatore, that's not you. That kind of went off topic, but it was a distinction that, since it came up, I needed to chime in. What do you think, Salvatore? Hello? Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Well, I think we're not.
All right. Yeah, I guess we will.
Hey, I'm back. Can y'all hear me now?
Oh, yes. Hi.
Okay. So,
yeah,
my phone went to sleep.
Aw, that's okay.
Okay.
We're gonna wrap up, but did you get to hear kind of that back and forth about how we can have the?
I did hear it.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Good.
Let me just say one. So I actually have thought about that a little bit, and I'll be really quick. As long and because the question I would ask myself is how am I different than what I was before when I was a Christian and whatever, if I'm believing these things? Well, one, I don't believe they have an external reality, and two, I'm not asking anyone else to live their life like me.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And I think that makes
Agreed. And again, I think somebody in the live chat actually put it very well. It's pragmatism and idealism. I think when you're facing the outside world, pragmatism in that context is very understandable. But are you holding yourself to ideals that you think are important?
I'm also very curious, honestly, Salvatore, about the idea of your viewpoint not necessarily reflecting external reality, I think is what you said. You're not necessarily commentating on what is real in this way. To an extent, I mean, we all do that every time we open up a book or watch a movie, right? But I would actually love for you to call back at some point and let us talk a little bit more about that, because that to me is the fascinating piece here. Ultimately, when we get down to the crux of it, it's, do you prefer a viewpoint that accurately reflects reality as closely as it is possible to do? Or do you prefer to maybe play with things and mix it up a little bit? And is that harmful or harmless, as long as you are aware that it's not necessarily the way things really are? So I would love to get more into this, but I think we need to wrap up for today.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the time. I will hang up and squee and call back later.
Sounds good. Thank you for calling in.
Take care.
Yeah. All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye.